Recording in progress.
Okay. So let's try to get busy here and get to doing what we're going to do. So today I wanted to pick up where I'd left off with y'all about I had talked to y'all very briefly about that worksheet last week, and I wanted to make sure that we go over that for a little bit, and then we'll hop into the stuff in the book. Are there any questions or comments or concerns right now? No? Okay. The basic idea of doing the 3 gratitudes and 1 problem is simply that, we live in a society where we talk a lot about what's wrong, and we often hear people talk about, I want to know how I want to know how we can fix this or we can fix that, but we don't really also, and then sometimes we hear people saying, I really wish that we could spend more time talking about the good stuff and not so much about the bad stuff. So actually what I realized a few years ago was that if you start with the things that you're thankful for, you have a tendency to approach problems when you're talking about them with other people a little more gracefully and not quite as with so much contention, right? So basically what I want us to do after we do the 3 gratitudes and 1 problem, I'll kind of lay it back out again. I'm just going to pick 2 or 3 people at random and ask y'all to share, okay? And then we'll talk a little bit about what your problem is. Then we'll get more deeply into what's actually going on in a very short introduction to ethics, a very short introduction by Blackburn, okay? So today, what's going on here? Yeah. Okay. So today we'll do the 3 gratitudes and the 1 problem. I had told y'all the other day something along these lines, not exactly, but that I was grateful for living, grateful for believing, and grateful for loving. And that I thought the problem was ignorance. And now remember, I had asked that y'all not knee-jerkedly pick as one of your gratitudes or all your gratitudes, God, nature, country, state, family, friends, right? Just because those are things that we're constantly being told we should be grateful for. I mean, even by this, in regards to the people in our lives, they tell us that. Like your mom says, you should be grateful for me because I gave you birth and blah, 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 your life and blah, 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 and all this. All right. So rather than going with the ones that we know we're supposed to be grateful for, we go with something that maybe we take for granted. So it was supposed to be an exercise where you really thought about what am I grateful for outside of these things that I'm told I should always be grateful for. And let me just choose 3 people. La 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 la. Raghu, right? Okay. What's your name? Anwar. What's your name? Katie. Okay. Raghu, we'll start with you. What are 3 things you're grateful for? So you got to talk louder because I'm deaf. Your perspective. Okay. What else? Your glasses. Okay. That's good. That certainly helps with your perspective. Your spectacles help perspect. What's your 3rd? Your kindness. Okay. You're grateful for kindness. Okay. Perspective, glasses, and kindness. All right. I'm not going to get to the problem just yet. I'll come back to you. How do you spell your name anyway? R-A-G? R-A-G-H-U-L? Raghu? Is that right? G. Raghu. All right. Awesome. All right. Now, Anwar, what about you? What are 3 things you're grateful for?
Well, I said I was thinking maturing quickly.
Maturing quickly. Okay. Maturity.
I was thankful for not getting hurt in this car accident.
Okay. Unhurt, unharmed. That's specific to the car accident, but we'll know that. Okay. What about a 3rd?
Then I said I was thankful for my taste.
Okay. Taste in music, instrumentality. Okay, great. Awesome. And ANWAR? Okay. Awesome. All right. And I'm sorry, what did you say your name was again? Katie? Okay, Katie, what are 3 things that you're grateful for? Okay, education. Good. Okay, work, labor, job. Okay. Health insurance. Yes. Those of us who are not too desperately poor should all be thankful for health insurance that we can get in some way, shape, or form. Or else should be even more desperately poor. Okay, good. Now, when we take these into consideration, look at the kind of breadth that you can have here, right? Because it's about what are you grateful for, right? So Raghu is grateful for perspective, being able to see through perspective, and kindness to others and from others, right? Anwar is grateful for maturing quickly or maturity, unharmed from a recent accident, and I suppose that means also basically healthy. And then you have a good taste in music, according to you, and you like playing music, okay? And then you're grateful for being able to get an education, having a job, and having health insurance. Okay. Now, honestly, you could, if you wanted to, begin to kind of get an idea about who each of these three people are by the three things they're grateful for. Right? But we're not here to make an assessment about y'all. Gratefully, I'm grateful to you for sharing what you're grateful for. So I'm not going to psychologize you while we're here. But now let's go ahead and go back. Raul, what is the matter with the world? Desire. Okay. We want one word answers. There's a reason for that. They'll get to in a little bit. Okay, so desire and Anwar, what's the matter with the world? No, undriven?
Yeah.
Unmotivated. Lack of motivation? Unmotivation, dismotivation, lack of motivation, unmotivated. Okay. And Katie, what do you think? What's the matter with the world? Okay. Now, the interesting aspect of this exercise is to stop now that you kind of named what's the matter with the world. Why do I ask you to name what's the matter with the world? Why do you think? Just one thing, one word, one name. What do you think that's all about? If you can name something, it's the beginning of release from it, right? I'll give as an example. My favorite example comes from Christian narratives. When Jesus was met by a man who was possessed by demons, and it's interesting because the very first chapter that we read today, the very first part of what we're reading today, the death of God, the author Blackburn actually points this out as an act of possible unethical behavior on Jesus's part, because he assumes that someone with mental health is possessed, and he kills a bunch of pigs in order to, right? Because in the story, Jesus asks this man, "What's your name?" The name of the devil. The devil says, "My name is Legion because we are many," and he casts the demons out of the person into pigs, and the pigs run off a cliff. So from the point of view of some sort of general ethical idea, there's something weird about that. Maybe Jesus does know more than the next person about things, but it does kind of seem like he's treating a person who has a mental problem as possessed by a demon, and then he doesn't mind killing a bunch of animals. So for people nowadays, some people would find that ethically weird, right? But really the main point that I'm bringing up with this is to show you can use the same example and still get different philosophical ideas out of it, right? And so what Blackburn is doing is saying, for people who aren't Christian, this could be problematic, right? What I'm saying is, whether you're a Christian or not, the idea that is put forward in that myth actually is that if you can name the problem, that's the beginning of getting rid of the problem, right? And in Christian theology, possession requires that you know the name of the devil to get rid of the devil, because of this very structure, right? All right, so what I've done here is I've asked you to talk about the three things that you believe you're grateful for besides what we normally would knee-jerkedly say I'm grateful for. And then to say, give me one word name of what's the matter with the world, right? Now we go back and we say, Raul, how does your perspective, your glasses, and kindness relate to desire? So the issue here is this, that sometimes the things we're grateful for protect us from what we think is the matter with the world. But sometimes the things we're grateful for, when we think about it, the things we're grateful for contribute to what's the matter with the world, right? So this also helps us begin to situate and orient ourselves toward how do we go forward thinking, right? Because if there's something I'm grateful for that's actually contributing to desire, unmotivation, bigotry, or ignorance, then I'm part of the problem, right? Okay, so the issue really is more how do you relate desire to the three things you're grateful for? In one way, how do they protect you? How might they be involved in what you're talking about? Mm-hmm. You have a desire to be kind. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. And what about perspective? Okay. Okay. That's good. And glasses, I know it seems strange, but even the physical objects you're grateful for can be connected to what's the matter with the world. You want to see what the fuck's happening. Pardon your language. You want to see what the fuck's going on, right? Okay. Now, Anwar, what about you? What is you have maturity, unharmed in an accident, taste in music, and an unmotivation or lack of motivation is what's the matter with the world. How do these have to do with your three gratitudes?
So for the maturity part, just for personal, I just kind of see the world in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that gives me the drive of whatever I desire.
Okay.
Friends, we don't continue to do.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So actually, I'm not too sure what the unmotivation would have to do with unharmed, being unharmed from that particular accident, but I can see definitely how it tends to do it. And also music and playing music can do it, right? If you're not motivated, you won't learn. You're also, if you're unmotivated, you won't actually pay attention to music to figure out why it's good. Right.
They got instruments like me.
Right. So it's a kind of question of commitment, actually. Good. All right. Now, Katie, what about you? I can see you sitting there chewing on your finger. How the hell does any of this stuff match up with this? Well, obviously, I think this would be an easy one, but what do you think? Right. Okay. Yeah. So bigotry here, we got to remember what is a bigot? Bigot is someone who has, all of us are bigots. And I don't mean that in the sense of we're all racists or sexists, right? Those are particular forms of bigotry, but we all have a bias. So bigot is someone with a bias toward, you know, I'm just going to say a noun, a person, place, or thing. Okay. So with health insurance, bigotry can be in a number of things, right? It could have a racial bigotry, but it could also have class bigotry, right? Did you know that if you make less than $20,000 a year, the Americans with the American CARES Act, Obamacare, is literally impossible to get? Like the thing that's supposed to help poor people, it's basically been oriented in such a way, especially if you live in Texas. Did you know in Texas you don't qualify for Medicaid if you make more than $250 a month? Medicaid's a safety insurance to make sure that we don't have lots of sick citizens, right? And outside of babies who technically don't make anything, so kids automatically are enrolled in Medicaid. Adults that make less than make more than $250 a month don't qualify. Right? You literally have to make, or to get to the class aspects of health insurance, you have to make in Texas $23,000 or $25,000 a year or more to be able to afford even the Obamacare healthcare. Right, to get them to pony up the majority of the cost. Right. So yes, bigotry plays a place in healthcare. What about jobs? Does bigotry play a place in jobs? Is it not? It's not supposed to, but yeah, right. So we see that actually one of the interesting things here is that this is a guard against bigotry, but these are both places where you see bigotry happen, right? Okay, this is really good. Is anybody confused about what we're doing? All right, now we're going to do the real thing. That's the most important thing. It's actually to get you to be thinking about one question all semester that you will yourself just keep thinking about and maybe bring up in class sometimes, right? Because what I'm going to ask now is for Raghul, Anwar, and Katie to come up with a question that's based off of what's the matter with the world. Like a question you would use to start a meaningful conversation with a friend. Okay? Here's the reason that I think this is important for what we're doing in an ethics course or for any kind of philosophy course. That is, the art of philosophy is questioning. And the biggest issue that we often have when people start to have conversations is that they begin with assertions. So what I want to encourage people to do is come up with a question that you just keep refining, and then have a conversation with someone where you ask your question, but you ask them similarly to give you a question. Trade questions first. Okay? If you start by trading questions first, it's not that there aren't any kind of like held beliefs or anything in the questions, but you're stopping you're forestalling the problem that occurs when you assert something off the bat. Right? Assertions generally, because they're assertions, they don't have to what, but a question actually requires you to engage it or simply say, I just don't really want to talk about that or whatever. But what I'd like for each of you to do is to come up with a question that you would ask someone to get them to start talking about desire as what's the matter with the world, as unmotivation as what's the matter with the world, as bigotry as what's the matter with the world. That's what I want each of you to do right now is come up with a question. Just think about it real quick. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do it. Hey. And then we'll kind of come back and make sure. So y'all be thinking about it for just a second. Let's give them 30 seconds to think. Y'all kind of, if you've been playing along on your own pad, think about what you believe is the matter with the world and try to come up with a question that you think would be a good question to start a conversation or a dialogue with a friend about that problem. Okay? And here, I'll give you my problem just to show you that the question you ask doesn't necessarily have to include the problem. How do we best educate each other? Now, that's a really straightforward question. I've had a lot of really good discussions out of it. When I first started doing this 8 years ago, or almost a decade ago, this was like a paragraph long question that slowly but surely we worked down to, with my friends, to just this more direct question. How do we best educate each other? Now, so y'all be thinking about that. Those of you that are there playing along with us, you maybe come up with a question based on your problem. Everybody try to give it a little bit of a try here, okay? Okay. Ragul, did you get one? Okay, give it to me. And don't worry if you think it's a little, we're gonna like shore it up a little bit, okay? Okay. Good. All right, Anwar? You still not sure? Katie, you got one? Okay. While Anwar is kind of finishing out, I kind of want to also point out that the reason that this idea, this process is something I developed from reading the philosophy and anthropological work of a Brazilian anthropologist named Paulo Freire. We'll look at a little bit of that stuff later in the semester, probably. I believe we are. Anyway, Paulo Freire was an anthropologist who went off into the diverse rural regions of Brazil and talked to Brazilian citizens that were illiterate and showed them how they can learn to express themselves about the actual experiential problems that they face on a daily basis, right? Now, most people always wonder, what the hell are you teaching people in college about that someone taught some people in Brazil that were illiterate? Because by definition, a college student shouldn't be illiterate. And my response to that is, he was dealing materially with actual illiteracy, literal illiteracy. We're existentially illiterate. Okay. There's a lot going on in our society that keeps us from ever asking and following through on the real profound question: who am I? How am I? Where am I? When am I? All that good stuff. Okay. And so I like to use my philosophy and ethics courses to encourage people to face their existential illiteracy that they have, and begin developing practices to learn how to self-reflect. Anwar, you got me a question?
Yeah.
What is it? All right. Great. So now what you would do if you were going to do something like this with your friend, like I would really encourage you to take the worksheet and do it with a friend, close friend, okay? Not somebody you work with and you half-ass know, not your family per se, but a friend, a very close friend. Take the worksheet and work it out with them, okay? And then what it becomes is, it's not actually a conversation. It's not going to develop around answering these questions. It's going to develop around perfecting the questions. But as you perfect the questions, you begin to get a better sight on what's happening, okay? Here's how we're going to perfect the questions. Ragul's question is, how would you mediate conflicting perspectives? And I'm going to ask Katie and Anwar, when you look at this question, what word pops out at you like, I don't know what that word means, or I don't know how Ragul's using that word? Okay. I'm going to put that in a box. Anwar? Okay. Maybe mediate. Anybody else want to hop in here and say, I'm not sure how Ragul, I'm sorry, I'll get it in a second. I accidentally gave you a Romanian name, Rajul. Ragul is doing this work. Any words in his question that make you go, I'm not sure about that? Because here's another thing that I really want us to, why am I asking you to do this? Because even though I am assuming at this moment that you primarily understand every word coming out of my head, because I'm not using too much $5 terminology, most of the misunderstandings that happen in life happen because we think we know what the person means when they use a word. Sometimes we don't, right? Jose Ortega Gasset says that the meaning of a word says the meaning of a word is in the instant of its use, not the dictionary or common meaning. So it's very important whenever you're talking with people to politely ask, how do you mean bigotry? How do you mean this? How do you mean that, right? So is there anything else up here that anybody looks at this sentence, any other people besides Katie and Anwar who look at this sentence, this question, and you're like, I'm not sure about this word? No? I'm going to ask conflicting. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go 1, 2, 3. Ragul, what the fuck do you mean by perspectives? Okay. Point of view. Okay. All right. And how do you mean mediate? What? Okay, conjoint. I think actually by mediate though, do you mean conjoin or do you mean at first before you can conjoin them you have to litigate, get a meaning? Yeah, working around, that's good. Or work through. How about work through? Pardon me for using the shorter spelling, but I'm lazy. Work through. All right. And finally, I'm going to ask you, what the hell do you mean by conflicting? I want to know now what's conflicting. Okay. Unmatching, disagreeing. Okay. Now y'all are like, yeah, Maggie, that's kind of what I kind of figured that Ragul was meaning. Thank you very much for this waste of my time. Look, you'll be very surprised at some point that somebody, when you ask somebody a word, you think, oh, I got it all worked out what they mean by that. You'll be very surprised when they come back at you and they say something that just seems total wackadoodle. It happens to me all the time when I talk to people. Maybe that's because I'm a bulldog that's always going after some slight little bit of inconsistency, but right? But it does. It happens a lot more than you realize it. So we're going to leave that there. And what I would ask Ragul to do is to take how these words that were brought up as questionable, or question worthy in themselves, rework the question with that in mind. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and go to Katie since she gave me the question second. Is that okay? Katie? All right. So what I want now is for Anwar and Ragul to look at Katie's question. How would we work on our own personal biases? Look at Katie's question and what in there makes you go, how does Katie mean this word? Ragul, I'll let you go. No. You don't. You just ask. How do you mean work? Because if you say improving, see, if you start giving them their own, you start giving them interpretations, then you're already beginning to like kind of make it match up. What you want is to kind of see where is the confliction, right? This is going to be really hard thing for a lot of us to believe, considering that we live at a time when disagreement and trolling is at such a high level, but communication actually begins in disagreement. right? If I agree with everything you say, I have no need to communicate with you. So it's because we don't have complete 100% agreement with each other that we actually need to communicate, right? So that's where communication begins. So, so we have work. Anwar, what about you? Okay. Very good. Anybody else got a word up here you want to let me know? Yeah, Vienna. Wood. Okay. Excellent. And because I have to I'm devices. So you got 4. Now we'll go 1, 2, 3. All right. So Katie, how do you mean work? Somebody put that word in your head. No, I'm just kidding. How do you mean own? Okay. Self. Okay. Maybe actual. I'm putting words in your mouth because I'm a teacher. That's not what y'all are supposed to do. Actual, maybe. Maybe. Think about it. Anybody else? Oh, and I'm still talking to her. See how easy it is for me to get confused when you have ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, and ADHD combined together. All right, would. This was going to be a little harder. Would. This really, I think, this probably might require a synonym instead of how would we improve on our actual personal biases. Who said that? Do? Okay. This is actually, would is actually a weird variation of will. And it has to do with how the will actually works as a doing. So that's good. But what do you think? Okay. How can, like ability? Where's the ability for it? Okay. And finally, biases. I mean, I just gave a definition of bigots and biases, but I mean, let's see. Yeah. Let's say personal opinion. Obviously, that's concluded because there's a personal there, but yes, opinion. Okay. Belief. Right. Prejudgment. Prejudice. All right. Okay. So now, what I want you to do, Katie, is to take these variations and rework the question a little bit. Right. All right, now we'll do Anwar. Anwar, so Katie and Ragul. Katie, when you look at this sentence or this question, what can we do to help motivate society's aspirations? What do you say? I'm not sure what Anwar means by this word. Motivate, okay. Motivate. And Ragul? Aspirations, okay. Anybody else got something there? Yeah, it's Sam. Huh? Help. Okay. Good. Anybody else? Yeah, Peter. Society. Okay. Oh, this is inflation. One, so more every time. Anybody else? Yeah. What's your name? Aaron. We. Ah, thank you. Actually, I'm going to put that one in a circle. You didn't ask about that in the other questions, so I'm glad somebody asked about it. So we. All right. Let's go ahead and just keep it at that. So we went with motivate, aspirations. Was it help and then societies? Help, societies, We. All right. So, oh, wait, I didn't do mine. What? All right. You're motivated, so we can do this with you. Let's do it. How do you mean motivate?
Motivate, trying to get it done.
Okay, so encourage. All right. All right. And get her done. Get her done attitude kind of thing. Get her done. Let's get her done. Come on now. Bring that shit in here. Bring that engine into the kitchen. You got this kitchen table's just high enough to work on that bastard. Let's do it. I'm motivated. That's my Uncle Bill. Anyway. How do you mean aspirations? Okay. Very good. How do you mean help? Okay, but I mean, what's another synonym for help that you've used here? I get what you're talking about because that kind of puts these things all together. So how does help? What is to help? To assist. Let me give you help. Assist. Give an assist. Okay. To assist. All right. What about societies? Okay. Gen pop. That's what we call it in prison. So we'll just call it, since this is what our society is pretty much the prison industrial complex come alive, we'll call it gen pop. So how about we? Who is we? Well, so is it only the people who belong in the society? Anybody? Only Americans? Okay, so when you say we, you mean any human being. All right. You mean all of humanity. All right. Now what? This is an asshole question. I don't expect you to be able to. How do you mean what? Yeah, it's a good question. And here, actually, the reason that I'm glad that we're doing the last in this thing is I can say really quickly that one of the reasons to think about these, the way that we here, the way that we think about this is that is interrogative pronouns. Interrogative pronouns. All interrogative pronouns in Indo-European languages, that's Sanskrit, Urdu, Romanian, Latin, Greek, German, English, all those Indo-European languages, they actually derive from an original root word called quo. Okay. And guess what? Quo is the root of what? When? Why? Where? How? Who? Thank you. Is that all of them? Oh, which? All right. In Romantic languages, most of these words begin with the sound qua. In Germanic languages, these words begin with qua. That's the reason they look so similar to each other. But they literally, it's also, this is where you get the Romantic language comes back in. The word question, query, and quest all derive from the same word. So it's always about asking after something, right? And in the original sense of these words, you only had quo, and it depended on what you were talking about as to the connotation. If the quo was our variations, right? Which, who, when, where, why, how, all those different variations. Okay. So why is this important here? This is very interesting. Here, we're asking, is there a process that we can do? Here, we're asking, is there a process we can do? But when you ask a what question, and I actually don't think that you were actually, when you look at the question, you see that it could lead to a thing, like what's our identifications, hows are processes, right? So the what here could lead to someone saying this particular thing could be accomplished, or this action could be done. But maybe how does it change your sentence, your question, if you say how can it? Does it change it? A little bit, right? See, notice that's the smallest little things that can change the direction of what it is you're trying to do. Yeah, becomes a little more actionable, right? So an interesting aspect of when you drop what out of your dictionary your lexicon for a couple of weeks. I didn't do this with y'all last semester, did I? I didn't have y'all do the what exercises or anything. So if you drop what out of the way you ask about things for 2 weeks, it really changes the way you think about asking questions. What is almost always motivated to give us an answer, whereas how is motivating to put us into a process, right? In other words, to find an answer that can be handed to everybody, or to just put everybody into a process, right? So I think that as you're rethinking how you might want to redo your question, Anwar, I think it would be really cool if you switched it to a processional question like how, instead of an identification question. It's not that we're not trying to identify. I just want us to see that identification is a process as much as the identity is done. It's finished. We figured it all out, right? It's not an equation. And this has actually been a big problem with a lot of our identity politics in the last 20 years, is that it all comes down to not the process of being human and the processes involved in identifying who we are and identifying how we interact with the world. It all becomes these categorical identifications, and you have to fit into your box, right? And when you don't fit in your box, there's something the matter. Does that make sense? I am genderqueer. Does anybody know what genderqueer means? Okay. What does it mean? Did you say yes? That's okay. I don't want to put you on the spot. Does anybody want to give me genderqueer? What's genderqueer mean? Exactly. That's why I like it. It's different for everybody. It doesn't mean the same thing. So it's always a question. You have to ask somebody, what the fuck do you mean by that? For me, it's about the attempt to overcome hard binaries, right? When I was 12, I realized I was gay. Did I realize I was gay, or did I just have two options? You can be straight or you can be gay. You can be a man or you can be a woman. I was 58 years old. 58? That's how I am now. I was 56 years old before I realized that I had never, ever thought of myself as a man. Thought of me as a man, right? I am a question to myself. Who am I? What am I? How am I? Where am I? When am I? Which am I? I'm a question to myself, right? When I was a kid, I was offered two choices. You can be straight or gay. You can be a man or a woman. since I was always treated as a man, that wasn't even one that came into creation, right? I just sort of did it. I went along with it. I would actually say there's a huge percentage of people who just go along with what they've been told. They never question this stuff, right? Now, the gay straight thing, now we know that's also not, there's like this huge spectrum, right? So asking these questions and learning how to do this stuff is all part of perfecting the power of self-knowledge, right? Self-knowledge begins with self-critique, right? Critical thinking, which many politicians don't want us to teach, is actually critical reflection. It means reflecting on what's going on and then asking yourself, how do I fit into that? How does that affect me? What am I doing? How am I contributing to this? Where am I on this issue? What am I about that thing, right? So when I bring this up, I can say the what of me is genderqueer, but that specifically is to cause evil, right? It's specifically to say I simply refuse to just mete out whatever you want me to fit into. Now, does that mean that I get treated differently? Well, here's the problem. When you look as much like an old fat white man as I do, you're going to always be treated like an old fat white man. But your friends know differently. Your family knows, right? And as you get to know people, these things kind of change. Then people don't just see that you are the what identity, but that you're a how expressing itself through a process of being alive. That's what ethics is. That's what morality is. Ethics is the ability to sort of survey the climate that we're in and understand the ethical commitments that happen in that climate. And then morality is the way that we live through the world of that ethical climate. It's our moral environment, right? The convictions and the choices that we make, right? So by getting y'all to make these questions, which appear to be arbitrary in one sense, they're not, because they arise out of a reflection on your own life, the things that you find important and the things that you find get in the way, whether it's your personal desire out of control or the desire of other people out of control, or whether it's, you know, your ability to be motivated in contrast to other people's inability to be motivated, or whether it's, you know, your desire to overcome bigotries while still being surrounded by bigotries and understand the difference between a valid and an invalid bigotry. So there's all this kind of stuff going on, right? So this gets us into, anyway, there's questions, concerns? We'll keep coming back to this. In another couple of weeks, I'll pick 3 more people at random and probably redo this again. By then, y'all have been thinking a little more about morality and ethics. So we won't get, you know, Katie's immoral questions anymore. We'll get, right, the questions will get better. But here's the deal. Again, I don't know how much I've said this so many times. Philosophy is not about answers. It's about questions, right? If you want an answer, turn the problem into a math problem, turn the existential problem into a math problem, a science problem, an art problem, a religion problem. They'll give you answers. What philosophy does is begin the process of helping you learn how to describe the situation, so then you can turn to other people who might be able to help with it, that are experts in those fields. But if you just start right off the bat with, I want an answer to this problem of bigotry, this is the reason why we're so fucked right now. Is that we're always going for the answer and never stopping long enough, and by long enough I mean maybe months or years of thinking, to perfect the question by a slow examination of what's going on with other people experiencing the same thing, right? So now we go into this issue of ethical climate. The ethical climate, as you'll see from Blackburn, is the enveloping conditions of sociocultural exchange. What that means is that every society you live in already has all of these sociocultural, systematic, legal, and policy structures already underway, right? Who here, raise your hand, whoever here asked to be born? Yet, you were pushed into a world, right? Pushed out into a world in which everything is already underway. And you got to, at some point, hit the ground stumbling and learn how to walk and learn how to run inside of a system you didn't make, inside of something you didn't ask to be born into, right? This is another aspect of the orientation. If critical thinking is critical self-reflection, right, it begins with exploring the ethical climate you were born into. Those are the commitments and conditions that have already been laid out, right? You were born into a, let's say we're dealing mostly here now, right now, with people who are natural born citizens of the United States. I know we have a few people here from other countries right now, but there are, but let's say you were naturally born into the United States of America as a baby. You didn't ask to be born under the auspices of the United States Constitution, but you found yourself already in a society with that Constitution underway, right? And now here's the way asking these questions is so important when you talk with people. What's the beginning of the Constitution? What's the preamble to the Constitution? How does it start? We, the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and ensure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. Yes. How did you know? I wanted to see, you could tell by the way that I was stopping, I was singing it in my head. I didn't want to, like, I don't know, maybe I should sing. I don't have a bad voice. Anyway, it's a great way to learn it. But the point is, we, the people, if you were to ask James Madison, not James Madison, James Madison? Madison wrote the Constitution, right? Yeah. If you were to ask James Madison, what the fuck do you mean, we the people? Who are people in 1789? White landowning men, right? And then people gets, I think around 1820, people gets reinterpreted to mean white men over the age of 18. They didn't have to own land, they could still vote. And then after 1865, it's men, no matter what their color, supposedly. I mean, I'm not saying they didn't have bars in the way of stuff, right? But it's just men, no women, right? The people is men, only men. 1920, now people means anybody who's human and a natural born or naturalized citizen of the United States is a person, right? Okay. Now, the United States of America, that's a commitment. We, the people, right? But that commitment's been reinterpreted on a regular basis. But it still supposedly goes back to that. Why? Because technically our form of government is, it could be a monarchy, a democracy, an oligarchy. What is our stated form of government? Democratic Republic, Representative Republic. I mean, you know, you can't have Representative Republic without having democratic elections. It's just a question of who counts as a person, right? Demos is the Greek name. Really, demos is the Greek name for a local collective, right? So when they say that Athens is the birthplace of democracy, what they mean by that is that it was arranged around all of the demoi, all of the different demes that were in Athens, and the people who belonged to that. And at that time, the people who actually could belong to a deme, the demos, that were demos, were men and their wives and daughters, but only through the men, right? Slaves weren't actual members of the deme. Foreign visitors could not vote. They could not do things. So we say, basically, what this is we can say the democracy is rule by the people. And I box that because the people thing has a sliding scale around it, right? So we also believe that all human beings deserve certain inalienable rights, right? So how does the Declaration of Independence begin? These are part of our ethical climate. How does the Declaration of Independence begin? That's good, yes. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, Thomas Jefferson, right, is the person who Declaration of Independence, another Virginian, another slave owner. James Madison was a slave owner, right? Declaration of Independence does not free the slaves. Constitution actually makes slavery legal, makes slavery constitutional. And if you didn't know this, slavery is still constitutional. A lot of people don't know that slavery is still constitutional in the United States of America. And that's because they don't ever read the fine print in the 14th Amendment, which freed all the slaves, but allowed the states to treat people who commit crimes as slaves and put them in prison to do slave labor. People, that's what the prison industrial complex, the for-profit prison industry right now, is based off of the fact that the Constitution still allows slavery if a person committed a crime. All right? That's an ethical climate thing. Right? That's the ethical climate, the conditions for socio-cultural exchange. So that stuff, part of that's set out in the Declaration of Independence, part of it's set out in the Constitution, part of it's set out in our laws that have been enacted, part of it's set out in all of our judicial precedents that have been created, part of it's set out in executive policies that interpret those legislations and those judicial precedents, right? And then on top of that, parallel to all that official shit, right, are the ethical commitments in your community, right, where maybe you live in an area that's predominantly Muslim that has different ethical commitments, right? Or maybe you live in an area that's primarily Christian or primarily Hindu. See, this is because we live in a society that does not supposedly discriminate against people's religious beliefs. So we've become what they call this melting pot. I don't really consider it a melting pot. I consider it more a stew in which you throw different things that are in their own little self-contained packages, and the flavor kind of makes its way out into the stew. But at any time, you can take the package out of it and let that seasoning, you know, that's enough of, that's enough African American culture. That's enough Hindustani culture. That's enough Arabic culture. Okay, now we still have a little bit of their flavors, but we're primarily back to Anglo-Saxon white Protestant culture, right? So these kind of things are always at play. They're always working us, right? People in government, certain politicians have created fear around things like critical race theory and critical queer theory and critical feminist theory, which are all variations of critical theory, which is a much broader subdiscipline of philosophy and social science, which is literally contemplating and evaluating. All right. All right. So if the ethical climate is the enveloping conditions of socio-cultural exchange, which includes ideas that are so taken for granted they operate unconsciously, right? That would be systematic. Right? They're built into a system already underway that you didn't ask to be put in, right? And you adopt these, you pick these things up, right? Moral environment is how we live out existence by our convictions. So we all have moral convictions, every single person, even a person who says they're an immoralist has the moral conviction to be immoral, right? To do whatever the fuck they want to do. Okay. So we all have moral convictions, and those convictions are the ways that we move through the landscape of our moral environments, right? So right now we could say that there's an ethical climate we live in. The moment we'll call it the United States of America, right? The moral environment we find ourselves in is this college in which we attempt to, if you will, find a way where we can all gather together such that we can think about some things, and our different moral convictions and aspects of the ethical climate don't get in the way of the free exchange of ideas. That's the glory of what it's supposed to be. Following. Right? And the issue here is that a lot of times what happens in the moral environment is people who benefit from aspects of the ethical climate that are harmful will often find moral excuses for allowing that to happen, right? So right now, I've mentioned it a few times, the prison industrial complex is simply turning prisons into for-profit arrangements, right? And, I can't swear to this like I could have 15 years ago, but if I'm not mistaken, almost all of the furniture in this room was built by prisoners in the state of Texas. Right? You're probably sitting on prison labor. Right? Nobody tells you that. Nobody tells you that when you walk into a courtroom, 80% of all the furniture, including the judge's bench, was built by prisoners. Right? Nobody tells you that half of the fruit and vegetables that you buy at Walmart are picked by prisoners, not by illegal immigrants. Right? There's just a lot going on, right? So the thing is, the ethical climate allows for prisoners to be treated as slave labor. And it also, part of the ethical climate is our economic engine is capitalism. So it allows anybody who wants to make a profit off of slave labor, the ability to make a profit off of slave labor through prison. Okay. And they'll say, what will they say about that? How might they argue for why it's okay to make money off of prison labor? Because they deserve it, because they committed a crime. Okay. And is that what you were going to say? Yeah. Ah, yes, 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 yes. The wonderful business ethics. I can actually give you a really short course in business ethics, and y'all will be like, I'd just rather have this short course in business ethics than this rambly ass thing Maggie's been doing. Here's your short course in business ethics. For business, it's ethical if it's legal, and it's legal so long as there's no laws that say it's illegal. And it's definitely legal if the law says it's okay. So that's business ethics 101. That's it. That's your business ethics course. I'll give you all an A in it. Now, how about getting into a little deeper issue here, right? Yes, it's the case that businesses are not breaking any laws by doing this, right? In fact, they've actually been quite proactive in helping create laws that ensure that the things they're doing are not illegal so that they can keep making money off of it, right? Have you started noticing that they're not putting people in jail as much as they used to? They've started this thing where they're like, well, we'll just go ahead and just put a monitor on you, a tracker on you, and you can go to work and you can do this kind of stuff, but we're not going to put you in jail or whatever. That's still the prison industrial complex. They're pivoting now to monitoring people in their homes so that they don't have to have the extra expenditure of prisons and jails. They would rather there not be, except with very small cases, they would rather that they not be having to waste money on people who may be coming and going pretty quickly if they can keep prisons for violent criminals who can still do labor, and then they can make money off of these people who just get to stay in their home, but they're still being charged hundreds of dollars a month with them not having to put out anything more than $20 in equipment, right? So there's that. So the moral environment, living out our convictions, includes the ability to arrange what benefits or detracts from our personal success, right? We can make arrangements to do that. You want to be really careful in motivating yourself that you don't find ways and motivate yourself into justifying the harm you do to other people because you're making money off of it, right? And as I say here, that is the ability to ignore what helps me but hurts others. Also, the ability to see what is causing harm and work to mitigate that. So in other words, you can use the same kind of reflection that allows you to find an excuse for why you're benefiting off the harm of others is okay. That same power is also usable to figure out if what I'm doing is harming somebody, how can I get away from that? Right? Okay, so there are challenges to ethical decision making that seep into the moral environment and make it more toxic. And you can kind of think about this like if the moral environment is just putting out a ridiculous amount of toxic waste from people finding ways to not actually be moral and take advantage of other people, that causes in itself a kind of ethical climate crisis, right? That as it kind of makes its way up into the climate, it begins to denigrate the climate as well, right? The challenges to ethical decision making and moral environment, the ones that we're going to be looking at are the death of God, relativism, egotism, evolution, determinism, unreasonability, and false consciousness or bad faith. Okay. Now, we're going to be 1 or 2 days behind, but keep doing the Blackburn reading. And when we come in on Thursday, we'll go ahead and we'll focus in on the death of God. And we were supposed to do that today and then do relativity, but we're going to be a day or two behind. So let's just kind of go with that. So what I want you to do first, be sure you've read that little section. It's like 7 pages long on the challenge to ethics, the death of God from part 1. It's pretty simple and straightforward. We come in, we'll hit the ground running with that. All right. Love you guys. I'll talk to you on Thursday. If you have any questions or anything, be sure to email me. Oh, I didn't give the roll sheet out. Shit. Hold on a second. I'm just going to call the roll real quick and we'll just get out of here as fast as possible. Okay. All right. Anar's here. Samantha's here. Nana. There you are. Yeah. Okay. Frederick. Tamika. Frederick. Oh, there you are. You're Frederick. Okay. Tamika. Tamika. Aiden. Okay. Evelyn. Emma. Jamie. Diego. Andrew. Brandon. Savannah. Jasmine. Vienna. Mackie. Hi. Leslie. Isabella. Julius. Raguel is here. Jaritza. Date. Christian Thomas Paul. No. Catherine. Aaron. Avery. No, Avery. Peter Wright. And Peter Yakub. Okay. And Asim. All right. Awesome. Thanks, y'all. You have a beautiful day today, too. Hey, Raggle, what's up? Okay. That's fine. It'll count toward the 4 that you got off, so that's good. So you should be okay. Is that all right?
Yeah, it's good.
Did class go okay today, you think?
It was good, yeah.
Okay, good.
All good.
Oh.
I started reading it, but the words are like, not too bad.